Hello and welcome back everyone. Today is another episode of Photo Stories, and this is a series where I just take some recent images I have captured, and then I just talk a little bit about the story behind the image, of course. So this is usually when I don't film videos pertaining to the location or the photos that I took there. So recently I was at Englewood MetroPark. It's one of my favorite places. At least it's really starting to grow on me more and more as I go there, because it's just such a massive location with a myriad of different ecosystems and habitats just contained in this one MetroPark. And there's just a handful of waterfalls that are situated into the area. There's about 3 prominent ones that are displayed pretty clearly onto the trail map. And they are namely Oak Falls, Patty Falls, and Martindale Falls. And they're all varying different hikes that you have to get to each one of them, but they're all along the Green Trail, which is the longest loop around the MetroPark there. And for this specific visit, I was setting out to hunt down these waterfalls and finally get some early or late spring, just images of them basically with the green foliage and everything surrounding them. And so I picked out the right day. It happened to be just perfect weather, really cloudy and overcast light. And it happened to rain actually that previous morning and the several days before it. So, they're flowing pretty well, and it actually turned out to be almost easier than I imagined, even though it was a really muddy hike through the woodland there just to get to each one of them. Of course, so I really wasn't prepared there because I was just wearing my regular trainer shoes, no hiking boots, with any kind of waterproofing or protection of that sort. But yeah, so that was one little thing that made it a little more tricky, just with having less traction onto the trail there. But I made it work for what it was, and I happened to get the trio really of the waterfalls here. So yeah, the first one was Oak Falls. This is probably the easiest one, at least the closest in proximity to where I parked at the trailhead there. And yeah, I just set out on foot, boots on the ground, real quick along the Green Trail there. I picked up a trail map actually when I visited or entered the location, and just to be sure, because it's a place I haven't gone to too much, but like I said, I'm starting to really get there more and more often for birding or in this case waterfalls. But yeah, so I got the trail map and I set out to go Oak Falls first, and that one was pretty much the hardest one, I'd say, to photograph. Looking back on it now, a lot of the images turned out to be really underexposed, and it was the lightest, I would say, flowing waterfall of the 3, which it pretty much is all year, because even in summer especially, it just dries up to basically nothing, and you could honestly pass by it on the trail there, from above at least, and you could completely miss it. So yeah, those waterfalls was really tough to get, but you had to drop down basically from the trail, because the way the trail is that you're right above it, and so you had to drop down to really see it, just face on. Head on with the waterfall there, but had a nice look to it. It was a nice kind of recessed cave almost, kind of appearance to it almost. It reminds me of the grotto from Glen Helen actually, which is another waterfall that I photograph a lot of. But this one, yeah, it was really tricky to get to, and you had to really find it, I guess, good composition at least to really get to it. So yeah, I did lots of just the basic dead-on shots. I think I did the most of them in vertical composition, orientation. But yeah, it was just really tough to get work that kind of waterfall there. And honestly, that was probably my least favorite images of the 3 here, which, as I'll explain here in a moment, I think it gets better and better. But yeah, they turn out all right, but they're nothing really, portfolio worthy in my opinion. But yeah, I still like them for what it was. And it was nice to finally get some images of this waterfall that's pretty hard to find, considering that, it dries up so much during the season. So the next one was Patty Falls. And this one's much more well known, I think. You can actually go up to this wooden railing as you climb down these concrete steps, and you can just see it right from the right side of it. But once again, this is kind of like a more of a tricky waterfall, because it is much more harder to get a good angle of it, because you are restricted to this railing right here, and it's really hard to go off trail because there really is no trail. It just slopes straight down. But this is a good waterfall because it's pretty much flowing all year, of varying intensities, of course. And of course, for this visit, that was no exception, because it was flowing pretty loud and pretty powerful, and then just mixed in with all the green foliage surrounding it, just made for perfect long exposure images. And so yeah, this one was a lot easier. I also did some where I just kind of kicked out the tripod outside of the railing even, and just tried that from a really kind of crept over angle like that. And yeah, it still worked out pretty well. I should mention I was using neutral density and polarizer filters for all these waterfall shots. And I feel like that worked out a lot better because I could slow down that shutter even more and could just get a much more pleasing, I say, blur of the water, of course. But yeah, these turn out a lot better at Patty Falls, simply because I was much more aware of its location, and this is one I photographed previously during, I believe, fall and winter. So I'm really glad I finally got some spring ones, and just nice overcast light, of course. And yeah, this is a nice one too. Once again, it's above the trail, so you could walk right by it. You could clearly hear it, if you're listening for it, of course, or even if you're not a guest. But you go right along it, and then you have to drop down on these concrete paths. But it's a lot easier to get to, I will say, for most people than compared to Oak Falls, where you really have to go down this slope, and it's really kind of slippery, and you have to watch your balance and everything, or else you just fall straight down, of course. But yeah, I was really liking the Patty Falls shots overall. This is a big improvement compared to the previous Oak Falls images I took, and yeah, I really liked how they turned out overall. And so yeah, went along the trail even more. This one took a few miles at least to get to, but I was really looking forward mostly to this one because it's the largest of the three. So yeah, just kind of building upon each big and small waterfall, and just building up to the biggest ones that consequently took the longest hikes to get to, of course. So this one is Martindale Falls, and these are easily my favorite of the three images I took for this session. Simply because it's the largest one, and I can just encompass a much wider angle, I think, from farther away. And the green foliage just really set out against just the brown kind of stones and rocks, and the dirt and everything surrounding the waterfall. And just the flow has a weird wispy look to it. It's very thin looking from this angle that I took it at, just right underneath this recessed cave, but it just had a beautiful look to it. And it pretty much does all year, because I've photographed, once again, this same one, I believe, in fall and winter. And it just has this nice shape and caricature to the waterfall itself. It's really unlike any other I've seen, as it flows down and just drops straight down into this kind of like recessed pool at the very bottom. So it has a pretty big drop off, and it's just a really unique shape. So obviously I took them all in vertical orientation just because it made sense for this subject matter here, of course. But yeah, I started out by doing, once again, it's on the top of the trails where you can see it. And I did some of it where it's very obscured, and you only get like a sliver of the waterfall itself, and then it's just surrounded by all this foliage, vibrant green leaves and everything. And those look pretty nice. That was just a nice little like icebreaker to warm myself up to what I consider like the proper image, almost like the postcard shot, I guess, of just the classic, look of the waterfall. And then from there, I pretty much just dropped down all these steps and kind of positioned myself on this angle that I've been at previously. And yeah, just worked the scene a little bit, but honestly, it was almost easier than I thought. And once again, thanks to combining the filters, the two filters I mentioned, really helped out in prolonging the exposure there. And so yeah, I really liked how all three images, the sets of images, I'll say, the subjects, really turned out. It's really great. I can plan out this trip, and all the weather conditions and everything work out finally for once. And to just knock off on my checklist almost of these waterfalls I've been hunting down, to get images of during a particular season. So, it really worked out in my favor. And my camera settings, I don't remember off the top of my head, but they were more than likely something like a low ISO, which I would typically do for most waterfall shots, especially if they're in good even light, which most of these were, unfortunately. So something like ISO 100 or 200 works pretty well. And then as slow as I can get shutter for most of these, especially the much more louder, intense ones. Like Patty Falls has a nice wide, look to it, I guess, and it flows pretty, loud and fast right next to your camera. So I wanted to prolong that shutter for that one in particular. Oak Falls, by contrast, is a little bit slower. There wasn't much flow to it as well, so I probably upped my shutter a little bit faster. And then Martindale was kind of in between, but like I said, I was a fair enough distance away from it, so it really didn't matter too much, at least. And yeah, so I did all that, and I believe my aperture was probably around kind of a medium range, I would say, for my camera, so like f10, f11, somewhere around there. But it's always nice to find the sweet spot, I think, for your camera, and also where the subject distance is away from you, of course, too. So yeah, that's pretty much it for those. I really enjoyed my time out there that evening, and just knocking off all these different waterfall shots. Probably took about an hour and a half at most, just because I was just single-mindedly on this pursuit to get these 3 waterfall shots, and I'm really glad I could just finally get it done at least. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the images here, and I really enjoyed taking them. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I hope you have a good day. Thank you.